I'm Bob and I like to make stuff. Today I'm going to show you how to add custom horn sounds to any car. My vehicle is actually pretty old, and that means sometimes the horn doesn't work. Now eventually I will fix that, but I also thought it would be a good excuse to make a custom horn that could sound like anything I wanted it to. And not just one sound, but 4. Those sounds will all be triggered by buttons, so I need to embed those buttons somewhere. I could pull apart the dash and actually put them in the dash. That seems like a lot of work and very specific to my car. So instead, let's make a little control panel that we can mount right down here behind the gear shift, and then translate that to a 3D model and 3D print an enclosure. I'm gonna get some basic measurements from within the car where I think it should fit, and then we'll go to Fusion 360 and try to model it. But first, the electronics. This is the soundboard from Adafruit, super easy to use, no programming required. This is a DC converter to get you from 12 volts to 5 volts and a USB output. This is a cigarette lighter adapter to get us power, and then a small mono amplifier with speakers, power in, and a volume knob. Then an 8-ohm indoor-outdoor speaker. I connected these together by using some crimpers to put some ends on the wires of the speaker, and this just helps it plug in easily onto the amplifier. That way I can take it on and off as I need to. The input from the amplifier goes into the soundboard, which is powered by the USB. I connected the cigarette lighter adapter, the converter, and the amplifier all with some wire nuts. Got all the hot wires together and all the ground wires together. So we have 12 volts coming in through the cigarette lighter adapter, which splits out to the converter. That turns it into 5 volts, which feeds the USB and powers the soundboard. The audio out from that goes into the amplifier, which is also powered from 12 volts, and then the output of the amplifier goes out to the speaker. And that's the system. I wanted to test it in this state, so I just set all the pieces in the car, plugged in the power, and then grounded one pin. And it works. To model this, I used my measurements to draw out the side panel and then extruded it to the width of the whole thing. I hollowed it out and then drew some circles on the front of it to knock out for buttons. I got those circles equally spaced and then pushed them through to make a through hole. I also added some chamfers to the edges and then printed it out. The print took quite a while, but it ended up not actually fitting as well as I wanted it to. After figuring out why it didn't fit, I made the changes to the model and then reprinted it. I also made it wider so I could have 5 buttons instead of 4. This one actually fit really well. The only problem was that it was white. I only had white filament that worked in that printer, so I primed it and then painted it black. Then it was time to add the buttons. I just slid these into the hole and then put on the washer and the nut from the backside to hold them in place. I did this on all 5 of them, and these came pre-wired, so the wires were ready to attach. The pins on the soundboard already have pull-up resistors, so you don't need any extra ones, so I took one wire from each button, tied them all together with a wire nut, with one wire coming off to attach to ground. Then I soldered each one of those button wires onto a different numbered pin. While I'm doing that, let me tell you about the sponsor for this episode, Casper. They make fantastically comfortable mattresses. It's a combination of memory and latex foam, so it's not too squishy and it's not too bouncy. My entire family has slept on these things for a long time and we all love them. They're made right here in the US, and so when you order one on the website, it goes from the factory direct to your house in a box. You unfold it, sleep on it for 100 nights, and if you don't like it for any reason, you call them, they give you your money back, and they come pick up the mattress and take it away. I'm a big fan of Casper, and I think you will be too. If you want to check them out, go to casper.com/make, use the code MAKE, and you get $50 off your first purchase. Thanks. Now we need some sound effects to add to the horn. Now all you do here is take a wave file, name it according to the pin that you want it to be triggered by, and then copy it onto the board through USB. No programming or anything, it's very, very easy to do. So I've downloaded a couple of sound effects that you might recognize. I'm gonna put those on. That's a good one, and maybe people will dance at the intersection, I don't know. But then I also want to record some of my own, so let me do one that at least it kind of sounds like a real horn. Honk. And then one that everybody might recognize. Hey, I'm Bob and I like to make stuff. Then we go back and listen to those. Honk. And hey, I'm Bob and I like to make stuff. So now I'm gonna copy those to the board and then it's ready to install. Okay, it's time to install this thing, and there's a couple things I wanna say about that before we do it. I'm trying to make this so that it's not permanent. So I don't wanna drill any holes in the firewall to go into the hood, but I need to run a wire through there so I can put the speaker behind the bumper or somewhere up there. I found a hole to be able to pull the wire through so that I don't have to drill any holes. Every car is gonna be different in that case. So when you go to pull that wire through the body, just see if you can find a pre-existing hole that you can use. The other thing is that I'm not tying directly into the electrical system of the car. Instead, I'm gonna use the cigarette lighter. And that works in this case because that cigarette lighter is controlled by the ignition. So when the ignition is not turned on, no power goes to the cigarette lighter. And I'm saying that to help you in case you decide to do this to your car. If your cigarette lighter is not attached to the ignition and it's on all the time, your battery will get drained by this thing just being turned on. So if you do it the way that I'm doing it, make sure that that cigarette lighter is controlled by the ignition. All right, let's put it in. I fed the wire through the rubber gasket that covered the hole in the body to get it into the cab. I stripped those wires and then crimped on some connectors just like I did before to attach it to the amplifier. I plugged those in and then mounted the amplifier to the inside of the dash with some double-sided tape. I routed all the wires over, plugged everything in just like I had showed you before, and then stuffed it all into the box. There was a lot of extra wire, so I used some cable ties to get everything wrapped up so that it wasn't too messy, but eventually got it all fit into the box, and then the box fit right into place. I plugged in the cigarette lighter to make sure that everything was powered and then tested all of the buttons before I moved on to mounting the speaker. I connected the speaker wire that I ran through the body to the end of my speakers, so I had enough wire to mount the speaker in the bumper. I found a place to mount it on the bumper, but the hole was way bigger than the bolt that I was using. I added some different washers to step up the size to make it fit, and before I put on the nut, I added some thread locker. This is going to bounce around a lot and the vibration will eventually make that nut come off unless it's locked in place. I used some zip ties to pull all of the wires tight before testing it out. It's hooked up, let's try it. It's a pretty easy project overall, and the thing I really like about it is that you can make it sound like anything you want, and it's totally temporary. You could pull all of that out of the car in under a minute and leave nothing behind. Those little soundboards are awesome as well. You can put them in props or costumes or just about anything, and you can trigger all sorts of sounds with zero programming. I hope you like this one. Let me know what you think about it down in the comments. I've got lots of other videos that you might be interested in, and don't forget to subscribe and check out my second channel as well. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. Hey, I'm Bob at ILikeToMakeStuff. Today we're gonna make... Hey, I'm Bob at ILikeToMakeStuff.